Himalayan mountains are stunning, rising tall and reaching for the sky with jagged peaks, daring everyone to be brave and come for an adventure. Every mountaineer hopes to one day scale Mount Everest. But little do we know in the high Himalayas, the air is thin and time feels slow. Every step one takes to the top becomes challenging and strenuous. While some climbers decide to return, others continue the adventure, making Everest history even more enjoyable. Among those who dared to conquer Everest's height was Thomas Olsen. His journey was loaded with excitement, fun, and twists. Thomas Olsen adored the rugged landscape of his homeland, Borås, Sweden. He would travel to exotic locations twice a year to test his limits. But despite feeling satisfied, his curiosity grew, and he desired more. His determination fueled him to ignore the weather conditions and keep moving forward, no matter how hard it was. His thirst for adventures began in his 20s, propelling him to ascend metaphorical and literal heights. Starting from 2002 to 2004, he climbed 5 mountains successfully. His dream was about to come true as he prepared for his next most awaited and adventurous trip to Mount Everest. In 2006, Thomas Olsen and a group of climbers gathered at Everest Base Camp on a frosty morning. He glared at the charming Everest. Its tall peak and stunning views mesmerized his eyes. "I can do it," he repeated in his mind. Thomas was a fearless mountaineer and was considered a master of the treacherous slopes. He went through the most challenging journeys of his life, but this time it was different. Thomas had an athlete's body, and covering hundreds of meters was nothing much more for him. He climbed the mountain in 2 days, from Advanced Base Camp, which was 6,400 meters above sea level, to the summit, 8,848 meters. The Mallory route which he took generally takes climbers 5 days to accomplish. As the ascent began, the group battled freezing winds and bone-chilling cold. The slippery ice seemed to tease their efforts, but Thomas denied giving up to those heights. He gradually walked up to the mountain, fixing his eyes on an invisible prize. The journey continued for days as the expedition forged ahead. Every step witnessed human resilience and strength. However, mysterious incidents began to occur that disrupted the team's progress. Equipment vanished and terrifying whispers were heard during heavy windstorms. As he climbed up, holding the snow picket and other heavy equipment in his backpack, he looked at the peak that looked blurry white due to a heavy windstorm. He was fascinated and unnerved by a strange phenomenon that hissed in his group. He wondered if these difficulties resulted from his tired thoughts, or if the mountain itself was conspiring against him. Despite the anxiety lurking in the air, the group pressed on, adding excitement to the expedition. The journey towards the heights of Mount Everest was a war insistent against nature's most lethal forces. The air grew thin as Thomas climbed higher. He experienced shortness of breath and exhaustion. He felt a chill in his legs, which reduced his hiking speed. This was happening due to a lack of oxygen and exhaustion. He slipped on the icy slopes several times, which injured his knees. He wanted to take off his hiking shoes and look at his feet, but that was impossible at such a dangerous height. He looked above as he lay on the edgy snowy stone. The summit was still very far. Different questions began to emerge in his mind. Would I be able to make it? Can I beat the chill that is gradually overtaking my body? The trial of mental and emotional strength began. No matter how tired and sick Thomas was, he kept reminding himself not to stop, as he was close to achieving his dream. But he was tired, and all he could hear was the howling wind and the echoing crunch of his boots. He began to doubt his decision to embark on such a daring journey. Thomas wasn't scared of heights or the cold. He loved this mountain and dreamt of climbing up and kissing the highest peak. He looked down at the group members waiting for his signal. As he led them, Thomas peeked at the summit that was still way too far. He smiled, took a long breath, stood up, brushed snow off his trousers, and signaled the group members that he was ready to move forward. As he ascended further, challenges increased. Altitude sickness began to grow, a painful reminder of his physiology limitations. Nausea and dizziness were persistent that threatened to derail his development. Despite his misery, Thomas pressed on, his determination outweighing his pain. The wind intensity grew, and it was getting harder to check on other members as the gap increased. The group spread out due to heavy wind and snow, so communication with them became increasingly difficult. Everyone was on their own now, which was somehow pleasant for Thomas because this helped him in self-discovery and decision-making. But at times, He would wish other members were there when he was experiencing a sense of vulnerability. On May 16, 2006, the group reached the summit of Everest. They skied into the north face via the Northern Couloir, a 55-degree steep mountain face approximately 3,000 meters high. With every step higher, the weather turned more unpredictable. A brutal snowstorm would transpire, reducing visibility to the point that they couldn't even see their arms. This was a last warning from nature to halt. Thomas felt sick as the cold seeped into his bones, draining his energy and numbing his senses. He stopped for a while and waited for the snowstorm to pass, but as soon as it reduced a bit, he shuffled forward and began to walk on. Other members tried to stop him because the snowstorm was still intense, but Thomas was determined to battle it. A few minutes of rest gave him the strength and energy to embrace the difficulties and not lose his opportunity. He held the anchor in his hand, began stepping on sharp-edged stones on his way, and thought about his ultimate goal, which was not too far now. His unwavering faith in the transforming potential of adversity drove his perseverance, helping him to overcome each challenge with infinite grit. Tension cracked in the air as the group approached the fabled height where they thought the artifact would be. Thomas was leading from the front, pushing all the worries away. He could see the striking but strange top covered in mist that resided thousands of stories in it. Finding a hidden cave embellished with ancient symbols took a little while. Thomas's heart began to race and eyes began to shine. He looked at other members in excitement with a sense of admiration. This was an experience beyond his wildest expectations. Thomas thought about mountaineers who wanted to reach the summit but failed due to weather conditions or lost their lives climbing up. He felt gratitude for all of them because the last few days of his journey were the worst ever, and at times he was so exhausted that he may have given up. But his willpower led him to the world's highest peak. He climbed up a few more edgy stones, followed by the other team members, and grabbed the artifact. But something felt odd. He felt like the earth under his feet was moving. Was it only him that was feeling the tremor? He quickly looked back and signaled to the other team members to hold, and just then, the mountain began to roar. The earth shook, and a huge sound was heard. A giant snowball swept down, crushing everything in its way. As he fought for survival, the climber's world was reduced to a vortex of snow. The slaying wind was the only thing that could be heard. It took the battered and broken climbers a while to stand on their feet. The cave was buried under tons of snow and rubble. Thomas and the other members came out of the ruins. They were injured, but still could walk. Unfortunately, just as they were about to go off, and after only around 1,500 feet of skiing down the north face, one of Olsen's skis broke, adding tension to an already difficult task. They used tape to try to fix a ski, but failed. Thomas and other group members were forced to abseil due to a cliff that crossed the couloir. Thomas looked above at the snow anchor and felt something was wrong with it. But before he could alert and warn other members, the snow anchor collapsed and he plummeted around 2,500 meters. Olsen was leading the team up front. He risked his life to save other group members and died at only age 30 on the mountain that day. Thomas Olsen is buried on the steep slopes of Mount Everest. He was a daring man who proved that determination and courage could drive humankind to reach beyond earthly bonds.